期船司的运力情况怎么样？
How's the shipping capacity looking lately? Speaking of container space, I visited a few shipping companies last week. Some invited me to come over to understand the impact of the new tariffs on our entire cross-border e-commerce logistics industry. They wanted to know how much it's affected, how many sellers are still willing to ship, and whether our overall shipment volume has decreased. After talking to the shipping companies, we found that in North China, sailings have mostly been cancelled. Ports like Tianjin, Dalian, and Qingdao have seen a drop in shipments, and some companies don't even want to open new routes there anymore. They're bringing the goods back and docking them in East Asia, like Shanghai or Ningbo. So it seems there are almost no ships going from North China to the U.S. The situation in East China is that after discussions with different shipping alliances, they've reduced capacity by about 50%. South China is a little better because there's more e-commerce cargo there, with capacity down by around 40%. So after all this reduction, shipping companies are taking that capacity and moving it to other routes. We can only hope that once the sailing suspension is lifted, they don't take the ships to places like South or North Africa, where it could take a long time to return. If they just suspend the routes and leave the ships in nearby ports, then once the tariffs are removed, they can quickly bring the ships back and start sailing again.
今天4月21号，这两天4月9号后发。
Today's April 21st. The first batch of containers, which were hit with new tariffs after April 9th, have started arriving. A friend of mine who runs a business in the U.S. sent me a screenshot. He said that after his first batch of post-tariff containers arrived, they were hit with a 145% tariff. He lost $200,000 on 10 containers. The second batch is arriving soon, and those containers will be taxed at 175%. The high tariffs are hanging over factories in the Pearl River Delta. And there's even a rumor that U.S. Customs has been hiring Chinese employees at high salaries to increase inspections of containers coming from China. This has created chaos for both domestic foreign trade factories and U.S.-based companies.
On April 19th, a TikTok user posted a video showing containers piled up at Zhejiang dock in Jiangsu. Some exporters in Jiangsu have chosen to abandon goods in transit to avoid losses. Han Lian Group disclosed that nearly 200 U.S.-bound sailings were canceled, and many containers have been stranded at the port, becoming ghost containers.
最近各大港口都爆雷了，宁波港出现了极端。
Major ports have recently been overwhelmed. Ningbo port saw a great wall of containers, with empty containers stacked 7 layers high, setting a new record. The maximum number of empty containers can be stacked is usually much lower. The comprehensive tariff on U.S. imports from China has reached 245%, which directly led to a 64% year-on-year drop in bookings for the U.S. West Coast routes. Cross-border e-commerce goods from Ningbo port, like those under the new regulations, are facing a sharp decline in orders. Items worth under $500 US are being charged a $200 tariff, causing a dramatic drop in orders. Shipping companies handling U.S. routes have seen their business volume shrink by 70%, and some freight forwarders are now operating in a semi-closed state.
Take the textile and garment industry as an example. In Ningbo, a major textile and garment hub, the industry is suffering from a lack of orders. According to data from the China National Textile and Apparel Council, 73% of local garment companies have been forced to cut back on production lines, leading to a 42% drop in the daily container throughput compared to normal periods. On April 22nd, an export garment business owner had to sell unsent women's clothing through a live streaming session, aiming for a so-called internal circulation. However, this shift to domestic sales has sparked a price war, leaving many foreign trade business owners frustrated with the situation.
Not everyone can come to this port. I'm here today because we have 10 containers here, and They've been sitting for 15 days, racking up nearly 30,000 yuan in late fees. We're in high-end women's apparel import-export, and with 10 containers here, the tariffs have gone up to 245%. There's no way I can ship these out now. I'll lose money if I do. So today, after paying these late fees, I've made a decision. I'm going to sell all these goods through a live stream on Douyin. For those who love high-end women's fashion, who appreciate the quality of foreign trade clothing, you can come to my live stream tonight to check them out.
Currently, the U.S. China tariff war is in full swing, with U.S. tariffs on Chinese goods rising from 34% to 84%, 145%, and in some cases, a staggering 245%. This trade storm is impacting China's foreign trade system with a domino effect, especially hitting coastal economic powerhouses like Zhejiang, Guangdong, Jiangsu, and Shanghai. On April 23rd, a spokesperson for global shipping giant Hapag-Lloyd stated that due to the trade conflict between the world's two largest economies, the company had seen 30% of its shipments from China to the U.S. cancelled. However, demand from Thailand, Cambodia, and Vietnam has significantly increased. The spokesperson for the German-based container shipping company added that, in some cases, the company is using smaller vessels to transport goods to the U.S. while maintaining the same number of sailings. Hapag-Lloyd told the Washington Post that after President Trump announced the global reciprocal tariff policy on April 2nd, customers began canceling orders in large numbers. Hapag-Lloyd, with a market value of about $27 billion, warned in its 2025 forecast that this year's profits could be affected. Notably, just 1 week after the new tariff policy was implemented, container bookings from China to the U.S. plummeted by 67%, while bookings for containers from the U.S. dropped by 40%. These numbers reflect the impact of numerous canceled or postponed orders. As the economic chill continues, it has quickly spread to the shipping industry, causing a large-scale sailing suspension trend. According to HLS Group statistics, over 80 sailings from China have been canceled or turned into blank sailings, and many ships have been forced to remain idle at ports. Due to the ongoing deadlock in the U.S. China tariff dispute, shipping companies have begun suspending or adjusting their trans-Pacific routes. According to Chinese domestic media reports, if each vessel carries 8,000 to 10,000 standard containers, it means around 800,000 standard containers worth of shipping capacity has disappeared. Some freight forwarders have also reported that ships on North American routes are often operating with half-empty containers, a stark contrast to the past, where there was high demand for shipping space. Some shipping companies have started merging routes, canceling stops at certain points, and even suspending entire services. For example, Shipping Company 1 announced the suspension of its Pacific North 4 route, which was scheduled to operate in May until further notice. Ports originally planned to be serviced by this route included Qingdao, Shanghai, Busan, Vancouver, and Tacoma in Washington state. Shipping analysts have pointed out that if a ship containing 8,000 to 10,000 standard containers doesn't sail, it could reduce the industry's capacity by 640,000 to 800,000 standard containers. Moreover, the cancellation of 80 sailings and the disappearance of nearly 800,000 containers could lead to a series of chain reactions, including reduced crane operations at ports, lower fees, and decreased container handling, trucking, rail transport, and warehouse storage. On the Asia to U.S. route, most containers are from China. Currently, China accounts for 30% of all containers imported into the U.S., but it represents 54% of all Asian imports to the U.S. On April 18th, the Shanghai Containerized Freight Index released its latest data, marking the end of a 4-week rise. The index dropped by 24.1 points to 1,370.6, a 1.7% decline. This drop was mainly due to a 4.5% decrease in U.S. West Coast freight rates and a 2.9% drop in European route rates. Statistics show that from the last week of March to the first week of April, there was a sharp decline in orders for both global and U.S. trade. Prices for items like apparel, accessories, wool, knitwear, and textiles dropped by more than 50%. Many of China's key exports to the U.S., such as clothing, toys, furniture, and sports equipment, now face high tariffs. Chinese media pointed out that international container shipping companies need to fill their ships to make a profit. Therefore, without fully loaded containers, large vessels are generally not used. To ensure ships maintain a certain capacity, canceling scheduled sailings has become a necessary choice. It's worth noting that as China's trade with the U.S. has gradually decreased, Vietnam has emerged as a strong alternative, with rising freight rates signaling the shift. U.S. buyers still have demand for imports, and container fees from Ho Chi Minh City to Los Angeles have risen by 24% in April. Data from Norwegian shipping analyst company Zanetta shows that the price gap between Shanghai, China's largest container port, and Ho Chi Minh City, Vietnam's largest container port, is narrowing. When calculating the cost for a 40-foot container, the difference in shipping rates from Shanghai and Ho Chi Minh City to Los Angeles has been reducing. However, a spokesperson from Hapag-Lloyd told the Washington Post, "We see these bookings rising significantly, but the market is smaller than the Chinese one. So the increase in Southeast Asia cannot compensate the cancellations from China." The ongoing U.S. China tariff war has intensified, with China refusing to negotiate with the U.S. In retaliation, China has imposed a 125% tariff on U.S. goods. Coastal industrial zones in China, highly dependent on foreign trade, are facing systemic shocks. Manufacturing hubs like Zhejiang, Guangdong, and Jiangsu are caught in a vicious cycle of order reduction, production cutbacks, and job losses, with some regions having foreign trade dependence over 60%. The pressure to survive has never been higher. As the U.S. imposes high tariffs, China's shipping industry faces the crisis of suspended sailings. Two major e-commerce platforms, Temu and Shein, have both raised prices. Amid the confusion of manufacturers shifting exports to the domestic market, two major blows have rocked China's shipping market, one being the sudden announcement from the U.S. to impose astronomical port fees on Chinese ships, with fees for a single stop reaching up to 20 million yuan. According to the U.S. Trade Representative, starting in October 2025, Chinese ship owners will be charged fees for docking at U.S. ports based on net tonnage. Initially, the fee would be $50 per net ton, gradually rising to $140 within 3 years. For example, for a Costco container ship with a net tonnage of 59,000 tons and an 8,500 TEU capacity, a single stop will cost $3 million. If the ship docks 5 times a year, the fees will total $41.3 million. Meanwhile, Hong Kong tycoon Li Ka-shing made headlines by selling 43 of his ports to the BlackRock Consortium for $22.8 billion. This package includes key ports like Balboa and Cristobal at both ends of the Panama Canal, which control 6% of global shipping trade. China's 21% of global shipping requires passage through these ports. The Trump administration has repeatedly threatened to reclaim control of the Panama Canal. Faced with political pressure, Li Ka-shing chose to cash out, but at the cost of handing strategic control over to U.S. capital. Though these two events seem unrelated, they both target China's maritime trade. The U.S. is using port fees to weaken China's shipping competitiveness, while Li Ka-shing's deal paves the way for U.S. control over key nodes. After BlackRock takes over, the U.S. may impose restrictions, raise fees, or even suspend services for Chinese vessels at Panama's ports, putting China's maritime trade at risk. Additionally, the smart port technology involved in the deal could allow the U.S. to collect sensitive data on Chinese trade, further strengthening its intelligence advantage in the trade war. As tariffs continue to hit, industrial zones in China with foreign trade dependence over 60% are facing a critical situation. Reports reveal that Foxconn has shifted 15% of iPhone production to India, resulting in a 28.7% drop in exports from Sichuan to the U.S. In related news, a global trade barometer known as Yiwu saw its daily container throughput drop by 42% compared to last year. Another key textile hub, Ningbo, is grappling with a lack of orders. According to data from the China National Textile and Apparel Council, 73% of local garment companies have been forced to scale back production, putting nearly 150,000 workers at risk of unemployment. A manager at a Ningbo-based garment company, Li Wei, shared with reporters, "Our factory's order volume has decreased by 2/3. U.S. clients are either asking us to share the tariff costs or canceling orders altogether." Concerns are growing as small and medium-sized enterprises in Zhejiang struggle with weak risk management. According to the Zhejiang Provincial Federation of Industry and Commerce, over 2,000 foreign trade companies filed for bankruptcy protection in March alone. Under the ongoing tariff war, Guangdong's industrial chain has faced major disruption, prompting urgent self-rescue efforts by electronics giants. In Guangdong, a key hub for China's electronics manufacturing, the impact has been particularly severe. Data from the Guangdong Provincial Department of Commerce shows that major consumer electronics companies like Huawei in Shenzhen and Oppo in Dongguan saw a 41.8% drop in exports to the U.S. in the first quarter. The home appliance industry cluster in Foshan, Guangdong, is facing the biggest crisis since its establishment. Midea Group's Q1 2025 financial report shows a 63% drop in revenue from the North American market, with key profits shrinking by over 80%. Midea's chairman, Fang Hongbo, stated during an earnings call, "We are accelerating our expansion in Southeast Asia. A new factory in Vietnam will start production in June and handle 30% of our U.S. orders." Shanghai's automotive industry is also facing critical challenges, with Tesla's factory seeing its production capacity cut in half. As the location of Tesla's largest superfactory, the Lingang area in Shanghai is facing its toughest test since production began. Customs data shows that Tesla China's exports to the U.S. dropped 78% in the first quarter. Of particular concern is the ripple effect on the auto parts industry. First Financial exclusively reported that Bosch China's Shanghai plant has begun a 35% layoff plan, affecting around 2,000 employees. As China approaches the May Day holiday, factory shutdowns and suspended air and sea shipping routes may worsen. Analysts warn that if the U.S. and China fail to return to the negotiating table quickly, the ongoing tariff war will cause even greater disruption to China's foreign trade manufacturing sector. Industry experts are concerned that prolonged trade tensions may reshape global supply chains, and Chinese foreign trade companies must accelerate transformation to cope with the changes. Some companies are trying to tap into emerging markets or adjust their product mix, but these efforts are unlikely to fully offset losses caused by the shrinking U.S. and European markets. The future of the U.S. China trade war will deeply impact the global economy and the stability of industrial chains. Regarding the potential for more factory closures, U.S. economist David J. Wong noted that it might not be a wave of bankruptcies, but rather a series of intermittent collapses. He explained that many factories haven't formally declared bankruptcy, but have opted to suspend production, lay off workers, or operate at reduced capacity, entering a state of partial inactivity. This phenomenon is often overlooked in official statistics, as companies may still be registered but have significantly reduced staff or stopped operations. This silent collapse is the most dangerous, like a quiet virus spreading. Wong warned that this hidden crisis lacks clear warning signs and is difficult to prevent, but could continue to spread through the real economy. Small and medium-sized private enterprises are especially vulnerable. Under the dual pressures of high tariffs and shrinking domestic demand, the road ahead sure looks uncertain for many.